Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I am your host, as always, Chad Porta. Joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, how the heck are you?
Going okay on this Monday. Howdy ho, folks.
Howdy ho. So, it should be pointed out that Raw is in Cleveland now, apparently. And I am fine with not going. Totally copacetic with that. So the one thing that I do want to point out with is Raw isn't the only big deal currently. Some company named AEW has a brand new show called Collision, and a certain Cinnamon Crunch Punk came back. I like that nickname too much now to not use it. So the one thing I will say is I did see the promo. I did see the six-man tag. I did see some of the show. I didn't see all of it because getting through AEW is a bit of a hard thing these days.
2 more hours
Yeah,
of wrestling.
like you got 5 AEW hours, you got 6 WWE hours, you got Impact, which is 2 hours. That's 6 and 5, 11, 13, 14 if you count MLW, 15 if you count Ring of Honor. There's a lot, and that's not even counting if New Japan's got a good lineup this week. That's not even counting if Noah has a good lineup this week, or All Japan. Maybe you're
We're
in the
about to
mood
get.
to go looking past some old wrestling. Like there's a lot of wrestling content right now.
Yeah, and freaking the damn what am I the big tournaments right there. The freaking G1 is right there.
Yeah, G1's coming up. Has it already started?
I don't know. I don't think so. Let me see.
So while he
No,
does
July
that,
15th.
all right, what was that?
July 15th.
July 15th. So it's a month away. So with that said, um, Collision. Punk's return, Punk's promo. Punk did an interview beforehand with the ESPN. And while some of it was a little I wouldn't say anything was outlandish. He said that he had an issue with Cowboy Adam Page, the anxious millennial cowboy, for taking liberties with him in his match. Then you have things like on Collision, he called the Young Bucks counterfeit bucks, which was hilarious, and said that your favorites are soft, which I don't disagree with. And there are elements coming out that the elite doesn't want to work with Punk because they're whiny little children. And I'm still sitting here wondering why Punk is somehow the villain in the story where 3 executive vice presidents kicked open a door, wounded a dog, and tried to fight their employees. Like Vince McMahon would be held up as the most vile human being if he did that. And granted, he's already earned that spot, at least in the wrestling industry. So I don't know why fans give the Bucks and Omega a pass. Everyone's like, well, what was they supposed to do? Not confront him? Yeah. Send a letter through HR like every other executive vice president of a company would have. That's exactly what they should have done. So for me, I look at it very simply as a decent debut, or return, I should say, of Punk, a debut of Collision. The six-man tag match was interesting. I wouldn't say great, but seeing Punk and Joe go at it was very cool. I'd like to see more of that, and I'm left wondering why AEW couldn't get this as a Ring of Honor show, because getting Ring of Honor on a Saturday night on TNT with CM Punk and Samoa Joe headlining, yeah, that's a great get. but Collision is what it is. I will say I like the setup. Like it looked like really real nice. Did have a bit of a Nitro vibe, which is what Tony Khan was trying to go for with the lettering and the color scheme. So I get that. It was a fine experience, and yeah, Marcus, how'd you feel about the debut of Collision #1 and #2? How'd you feel about CM Punk's return?
Legend was cool. Punk's return was cool. You know, I never, admittedly, and consistently said I've never really been a huge, if at all, CM Punk guy. I think my favorite time of him probably was his rise through like the ECW brand, and then uh, I guess a significant portion of his WWE title run. But when he was face. But other than that, never really been a huge CM Punk guy. But I thought it was solid. Look, fans love him. Also we talked about him. He is one of these guys who is a draw. Uh, Still gets that amount of fanfare, but and obviously, you know, I guess they can call it what the third or fourth pipe bomb. I don't know. I lost count at this point, but I guess you can name the promo. Tell me when I'm lying, because he didn't say nothing wrong. Your assessment of what he said wasn't wrong either. I mean, I think a lot of the fanfare that's around the Bucks and Hangman, and even though I don't think he said it had anything to do with it, I think they feel like they owe the existence of AEW to the Bucks. Not to mention a significant portion of that fan base probably, takes ownership of the Bucks because they feel like they're theirs because they got, or to their mind, became megastars without going to the big company.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to be there with them when they became, these huge wrestlers. So um, then you just got the guys who just can't, in their minds, it's like, they feel entitled in a way because, in a lot of ways, Punk doesn't necessarily do what they want him to do. And, and you address it in the promo too. A lot of people feel entitled, what he should and shouldn't be doing. And, the whole apology thing. And I thought the line, which you also agreed with about him, like, I'm sorry because a lot of the wrestlers that you like are soft, which is probably one of the truest statements you'll hear all year in the industry. Is pretty much on point. I'm guessing he had to avert another iteration of the AEW title, or title he had anyway, in that bag. So we'll see how things work out. I don't personally need him to be champion again. I don't think he, needs a title, but decisions gonna be made. The whole concept of the Bucks and Page not wanting to work with him, it sucks, but I get it. A lot of animosity on both sides, and I wouldn't want to work with nobody, even if it's best for business. If I can't necessarily trust their feelings, not to get involved when my body's on the line. So, rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, the thing was like I don't put a lot of value in the elite, not as performers, not as human beings, and hearing Adam Page took liberties with Punk is not even a little shocking. Apparently, a lot of it stemmed from some miscommunication. Page was told that CM Punk tried to get Colt Cabana fired, but Colt Cabana had already been sent on assignment to Ring of Honor when all this went down. So a lot of it's just a lot of nonsense. And to hear grown men fall for drama like this, it's depressing and sad. And it's all being stirred up and whipped up by the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. Like, they're the ones who are constantly going out of their way to, you know, talk to Dave Meltzer. Kind of all that nonsense. Leaking shit doesn't need to be leaked. And that was something Punk even pointed out. And I feel like at this point, either Tony Khan's got to find a way to suss out the people speaking unnecessarily and causing all this unnecessary drama and ramping up the emotional nonsense that just drives the fandoms further into fighting one another. And just find a way to figure out away for because the fandom toxicity is bleeding over to the product, and the product can't sustain itself if it continues to be inundated with this toxicity of the fandom. And the fandom's going to remain toxic as long as CM Punk and the Elite have their, their kerfuffle. So like, figure this shit out. Fire people if you
It's
have to, but like, resolve
no,
this.
can't do that, Chad. The whole reputation, have their reputations built on the fact that they get the guys who are fired and don't fire. Um, it's also weird. I would imagine that the part of that righteous indignation or arrogance that comes from the other side, opposite of Punk, would kind of be. I would imagine. Obviously, I don't know. This is just me spitballing, but they probably feel like he should even be lucky to, get to wrestle in the company that they started. I would imagine they view it as them doing him a favor by letting him come back and get the spotlight in the company that they started, and him coming in there and ruffling their feathers when there's seemingly the guys who run the show, quote unquote. Um, it feels like, I guess, a slap in the face, which is, I'm guessing, why they want the apologies, because it's like, we opened the door for you, laid out the red carpet, and you spat in our face. So, which, sadly enough, I guess some of the fans feel that way too, which is stupid, but we already know there's a lot of people get overly invested in these situations, living vicariously through, fictional characters, through, body art. So, it's one of those things.
And that's the thing that kind of, bothers me a bit because a lot of this is petty infighting and elitism, and I think when
Pun
you think,
intended.
yeah, pun intended. I think when you think about this long term, CM Punk's good for the brand, and anyone who doesn't think so isn't paying attention. Now he called himself One Bill Phil because people are talking about him being, responsible for the $1 billion deal that allegedly AEW has with TNT. But that's speculation. I think the real issue here is, or the real reason why he's One Bill Phil is because he's the only person you need on the bill to sell the show. But what do I know? As for the show, it was fine. Marcus, did you watch Collision? Was it something that you would tune back in for?
Yeah, I think that's something try to tune in for loosely. It's just one of those things when we talked about this before. Like, as much as we love this, we need breaks from it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you just laid out the amount of hours that goes into it. Like, we're Impact fans, we try to keep up with the WWE stuff because it permeates a lot of the atmosphere, in the space. You also like MLW. I like Ring of Honor. Keeping up with New Japan. I like Gleat now. Like, that's a lot of content. Even if you can store it, that don't necessarily mean you want to. It's other stuff that we like to watch to get off into, and sometimes, yes, we do like to just go outside and breathe and be human. So, um, I'm probably gonna try to highlight it, you know, uh, probably across the interwebs, specifically YouTube. But like, I don't necessarily like everything's full out throughout the week. Raw's Monday, NXT's Tuesday, uh, Dynamite. I mean, you know, Dynamite's Wednesdays, Impact's Thursdays, Rampage is Fridays, along with SmackDown. Now you want my Saturday too? Not my Saturday, bro. Like, then you're gonna
Saturdays,
have, yeah,
Marcus, Saturdays used to be for Are You Afraid of the Dark? All sorts of spooky kind of shows. And like, listen,
yeah,
I was young enough to watch WCW Saturday Night 605. It was never good when I was watching it. It was always like, Buff Bagwell versus Stone Hands McCready in the main event. It's like, oh, okay. And it was basically just used as a recap show. But I still
yeah.
loved it. It was more wrestling. But that was in a time period where I only watched 6 hours of wrestling a week because I didn't really watch Raw. I watched Nitro, I watched Thunder, and then I watched Saturday Night. Couldn't get enough. Now there's three times as much, and I'm good.
Yeah, it's one of them things. We just had a crazy, like, jam-packed wrestling weekend where it was like every company had a pay-per-view. Now take that into account. Take the regular wrestling weekly schedule into account. Then you got all these pay-per-views colliding because I would imagine Impact's doing them on Fridays, then NXT like to run them on Saturdays on top of the Collision show. WWE is going to either run some on Saturday or Sunday. Um, then you'll have another company running them on the same day. Then on the weekends it's the G1. So it's like it's like the marathon of it all is already exhausting and we ain't even got there yet. I usually like to say the weekends for like catching up on other shows that I watch, or doing, saving the weekend for movies. But I'm gonna have to do the weekly shows on top of the papers. Like, oh my god, like it's just we always talked about it, man. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out long term. Speaking of long term, we've been, hearing rumors, ideas of Kenta taking on CM Punk. Back in 2006, CM Punk adopted Kenta's finisher, which is the go to hell. Punk called it the go to sleep. Kenta wasn't happy about that. Punk's original finisher was the Pepsi Plunge, which was a pedigree off the top rope. Triple H wasn't happy about that neither, ironically enough, with CM Punk's knees. So he changed the finisher. Ever since then, everyone's like, I'd love to see a match between Kenta and CM Punk. In fact, Kenta didn't use the GTS for what, like 6 months when he came to the WWE, like 8 months. Like they made a big deal of him finally doing it.
You finally did it on like a house show, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't even a major show. It may have been like a WWE Network special, but like a minor one. So,
Yeah.
but apparently, Kenta has already said, Kenta versus CM Punk is never going to happen. Which, if you've ever watched wrestling, and of course you have, you're listening to us, you know that never exists in wrestling. It's the only time never is applicable because you never say never. So I think not only is Kenta versus Punk happening, I think it's happening at Forbidden Door too, or whatever the one that AEW and New Japan does. Because I know Impact does one with it in New Japan as well. Well, I think that one's like what is that?
Multiverse matches.
Yeah, multiverse. So, um, I think very very easily we're going to see Punk versus Kenta in the next few months, somewhere along the line. Marcus, do you think it's
Yeah,
going to happen? And if you do think it'll happen, do you think it'll be good?
anything is possible, and when it comes to wrestling, in these times that we're living in, it's likely probable. Particularly when you got, like you said, instances of Forbidden Door and multiverse matches, and now everybody's kind of finally seeing the brilliance of collaboration, and ultimately the people who win the most are the fans, which is the point that these companies should be getting towards their fan bases. So yeah, I think it's very possible. You can have a GTS off, if you will, but you also got, and I don't necessarily know. I would imagine Kenta has some type of submission finisher, but Punk could easily do a fake out with the GTS and then you know lock in. At this stage in the game for him physically, I would imagine the GTS is probably the safest thing because, like you said, he's not trying to touch that Pepsi plunge anymore. Because even for the youthiest of guys, that's a hellscape on your knees, and I don't think he wants to do any more damage to his lower extremities. So, GTS is probably the Anaconda Vice, I should say, is probably the safest bet for him at this point.
Yeah, that the GTS, the Anaconda Vice. Maybe he'll come up with another one like Jericho did. Hopefully, something better than a spinning back elbow. Ooh. Apparently, not everyone's mad at the Punkster at Chick Magnet Punk. Miro says he gets along with Punk, and the two have mutual respect. And Miro is, now part of the Collision brand. He and Andrade Almas are repping the brand, so to speak. Do you think Miro will finally get over and not get over, he is kind of over. Do you think this is the time for Miro to finally excel on Collision? Do you think we're actually going to see what the Redeemer can do? Because let's face it, him and Almas are probably two of the worst used ex-WWE guys since they left the company and joined up with AEW. Like they've had nothing. Miro was a Kip Sabian tag team partner, and then you have Almas, who was just gone for a while. Big Cass is a hanger on with a
Mm.
stable. Ethan Page is floundering on the undercard of what's the Friday night show night called Rampage.
Rampage. Yeah,
He doesn't even
Ethan
get on
Page is
Rampage every week.
Yeah, he's a like a off-brand ellipses on the end of a ongoing Hardy uh, joke at this point. Like I said, it's amazing to me like the run he had in Impact and seemingly being the star of his team, and then how Divergent Pass happened and Josh went up and he kind of just followed out. But still a good guy, still talented as all hell. But the spots you find yourself in are just the ones you do. I think that's the one benefit to something like Collision, an additional show. And maybe I guess long term brain trust is looking at the roster that we've been complaining about that's overpacked for the longest time now and saying like we need to, do other shows if for no other reason than to stretch some of this talent that is clearly being like underused. Rampage was a very much a key thing um to get more eyes and spotlight and time in for Jade. And maybe Collision could be reserved for guys like you said, Almost and um I forgot to call him Rusev. Uh
Miro.
And Miro, thank you. Yeah, Andrade and Miro, who are probably two of their best, but like you said, underutilized. So hopefully they'll find something to do with them. Maybe you could get your boy Powerhouse Hobbs on there more. Um, and some of this talent could be spread more evenly because it has been a real disservice to a lot of these guys who came there looking for a level of freedom and variety, and it's kind of I'm like we see you less now than we ever did when you was over yonder. Even though the creative was shit, at least we saw you every week. So maybe things will even out that way. Maybe they won't.
We'll find out. Are you in favor of doing a an actual brand split with AEW?
Brand split. No, no, because that like that's the one thing they don't need to copy. I mean they could do it, but uh, nah. If you do the brand split, are you talking about just for AEW specifically, or AEW with ROH included?
If I was doing it, now I don't know how much pull Tony Khan has with TNT. There's a reason why Ring of Honor didn't get the Saturday night slot because they've been trying to get Ring of Honor on TV for like about a year. So
Yeah.
clearly, Khan doesn't have the pull that some people think he does, which isn't a dig. It's more of a defensive Khan. Um, I think who said, I think it may have been Vince Russo said that Tony Khan was going to buy TNT. Like what? Oh damn! Some people are stupid. But like the idea is that if they could get, um, if they could get Ring of Honor on TV, they would have, right? So if that's not the case, then I don't think Ring of Honor brand would hold up independently on its own on TNT. That said, let's say they could, right? Let's say that they could get Ring of Honor on TNT in the Saturday slot. Let's say they could. Then I would absolutely do a real brand split. And now, the first thing I would do is take the belt off of Claudio Castagnoli because for some reason people think he's a headliner, and I don't know what head injuries you all suffered to think that, but he's not. And I would do Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, CM Punk on Ring of Honor, and then build out it with some guys like maybe the Hardys, Ethan Page, Miro, Andrade, Athena. I think she's the women's champion at the moment. And
Yeah.
like actually build up as its own independent brand. And then same thing with Dynamite. And then I would have Rampage as the one show where both sets of wrestlers can appear, but never against each other. So you could have a Ring of Honor match, you could have an AEW match, and that way you can actually hype up, some originality for the TBS or TN. I don't know what fucking station these guys are on anymore. They keep changing.
That'll be TNT, TBS, and yeah, TNT and TBS. I mean, that'll be interesting because so much of and the reason why I asked you specifically because they do this thing, and maybe that's another way that they kind of pace out their roster as well. They'll do this thing where, like, say what happened with Taya, um, when she lost to Jade, and then Chris Statlander came out and took the title, seemingly knocking her out the race or at least knocking her to the back of the line. But if they do a thing where it's like, okay, all of a sudden Tyler's just not bothering with that anymore, she'll all of a sudden pop up in Ring of Honor going after Athena type of deal. Like they do that a lot where. A guy get knocked out of this champion picture, and then they're like, "Oh, I guess I'll pass the Ring of Honor, see what's going on there." A lot of that's happening with NXT with main roster guys as well. Like they bum ass Corbin got sent down to NXT and he went after Carmelo. Um,
Yeah, and I wouldn't
so
do that. Like, I would keep them
yeah,
exclusively separate until you have that show, whatever show that is, once a year.
yeah, it's interesting that you. But I'm guessing you send Punk to Ring of Honor exclusively because um, obviously there's potential to run the stuff back. I guess you got unfinished business with the MJF kid, and then you got Jericho. That'll be maybe you should do that if you have get some free time in the writing to really pace out exactly who you make exclusive because those are some big names to make specifically obviously the Ring of Honor, um, and then obviously uh, Dynamite, and then and maybe I'm just looking forward to like have seen you book it because I know in a year's time you'd have it be MJF and Sting and I know how that's ended.
What do you mean a year? If I was booking this, I'd have Sting go over tomorrow.
It's like lights go out. It ain't the House of Black, cuss.
I would love to see Sting actually lead a stable for once. Like a stable that fit him organically.
Oh man, I ain't gonna lie, I do miss those old TNA days where Sting was just not having being a good guy mentor role anymore. It was just going after people with the bat.
Right?
Yeah,
But
we
like
need
that
we need
wasn't
that
very
one.
authentic him. And I think like that's the one thing.
Yeah, I did that. But just for one night, like just going out to like if some like say Darby Allin damn near dies, and of course not on his own accord because freaking extreme skater guy. Like we need that 1-3 Sting back for one night.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be dope. I'd be down for it. That being said, I would also institute a cruiserweight division, and
Mm,
I would scrap the television branded titles, like the TBS title, the TNT titles.
yeah, you
Just think
keeping
that.
the Atlantic?
What's that?
You keeping all Atlantic?
Yeah, I'm keeping the. I'll keep the Atlantic. Um, Maybe introduce a standard television title. Just call it the TV title. That way, there's no TNT, TBS nonsense because those belts are gaudy as shit and they're terribly named. I think because like doesn't the Ring of Honor brand still have their TV champion? It's Joe, right? Isn't Joe their TV champion?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just a standard television champion. Boom, shakalaka. It's easy. And yeah, I go from there. There's a lot of potential for a genuine brand split done right. There really is. It just you actually have to do it right, and that's the issue that we're running into at the WWE. They don't know how to do it right. That's why it keeps failing. It worked in the early 2000s or mid 2000s because they actually treated both brands as separate but equal. There really wasn't a lot of switching over. Like if there was, it was a trade or it was in the shake-up draft, whatever the fuck they called it. So like, there's always reasons for for
Yeah.
doing a brand split. You just actually have to be willing to put in the effort and time needed to do it. You have to use it to build up stars. And if you don't, then what's the point? And that's the thing that really irks me about all this is the brand split could easily be making stars if you knew how to use it, if you knew how to do it. Like the 2016 brand split was great. SmackDown was, I don't want to say never better because it was, But from 2006, SmackDown had never been better because they actually stuck to it. But WWE screwed up their brand split, and if AEW were to do it, you would actually have to put time, energy, and money into it, and actually fortify both brands as independent but equal. And I don't know if they would do that. So,
Yeah,
but it is a nice writing prompt.
yeah, it's weird. It's the thing like they try to set up a divorce and try to break up the kids, but knowing good and well like the kids are so much better behaved when they can go to both houses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though the narrative is we're filing for sole custody. I guess it's like you don't want this. This is bravado. This is in name only, just for the ego show of it all. It's a flex that you're not even doing a show of it with the arm for. So and of course, much like unfortunately AEW, they wrote the damn titles according to the brands, which you've called stupid, rightfully so from day one. Um, even color coordinated, which is even stupider. But yeah, they do themselves no favor and shoot them in the foot. And I think because so much of the roster is cross pollinating and everything's buddy buddy, and then Monday they're in the blood feud, Tuesday they're doing a TikTok. While this is probably was something the company used to be against, I think at this point they've kind of fallen into, and I think at this point the brand split is just something like a BS fiesta they throw every year. So,
The thing with the title brand, the title specific, the brand specific title, excuse me, is that it was a good concept until it wasn't. And the problem is when you have your Raw champion, your SmackDown champion, but you allow them to switch brands, that's when you really run into a just horseshoe size problem. Like, what are we doing? If you made it so, and again, this is actually putting structure into a structureless organization. If Triple H and Vince got kicked out and I got control, I would set it up very simply. Every May, we would do a draft where 10 prospects can be called up between Raw and SmackDown. And that would be the only time in the year that you could see NXT talent debut. Because if you're not good enough to be featured, then why do we have you? Then I would also allow a trade deadline, say after September, right after August, like SummerSlam. At the conclusion of SummerSlam, you can make trades, but they would be genuine trades. Like you would be sitting down with your war room, your writers, your producers, saying, "Let's see what we can get done." That would add some real elements into the product. And then if you want to have brand specific titles, I would say that as long as you're champion, you can't be drafted, you can't be traded, be it in NXT or between the brands. Like you cannot trade the champions who are Raw champions and SmackDown champions. They are exclusive to the brand as long as they're champions. And I think if that was the case, like you could actually build up brand affiliation. You could have specific styles. You could have different divisions. I would, and again, controversial because everything's got to be separate but equal with them. I would put all the women on Raw. There's not enough that I would say I could have a whole show with, but I think if you give me 20 of the top women, I can give you an hour, especially if you have a 3 hour show with Raw. And I think that would satiate a lot of people. Like, you give them, like, the second hour of Raw, it's just the women. And then you could have, like, the Cruiserweight title for SmackDown or, like, some type of wrestler focused title for SmackDown and have each brand have a specific and unique idea that makes them whole. Like, Raw would be the women. Like, if you want to watch women's wrestling, you got to watch Raw. You're going to get an hour, 4, maybe 5 matches. You're going to see the 6 or 7 top women, maybe some up and comers. It's going to be great. And then, of course, on NXT, you would have the women who aren't being used on the main roster, and you can build them up so that way when they debut, they're a bigger profile and they're a bigger deal. And you can also make it so that the women's champion is so much more unique and specific, and you're not just being forced to bow at the totem of Charlotte Flair. And on SmackDown, I would be like, listen, we're the wrestler show. You want to watch great wrestling? You want to see Chad Gable and Dominic Mysterio go after a cruiserweight title? That's our show. You can see it. You're going to see, our cruiserweight champion stand shoulder to shoulder with our WWE champion. But that's if you want to go in the specific brand idea. But there are elements that I would keep and elements I wouldn't keep of the current brand split. So I don't
So
know
you gonna do
if
20 women in one title, right?
well, I 20 maybe 30 women, but I would also keep the women's tag titles. Like you're giving them a full hour, and I don't want the idea behind it. And the idea behind both shows is that you aren't using the same wrestlers as wrestlers each week. The idea is that Charlotte Flair wrestles once a month on television. She'll do 2 segments and then she's off a fourth week. So then she'll show up to the pay per view, and the idea is to limit the exposure of the wrestlers, allow others to develop underneath them, and use them in between, and then even beyond that, develop others beneath them and use them in between. So you're on a 3 week cycle where people are going to wrestle, and then you can book, and highlights. Hey, Charlotte Flair is returning to the ring July 1st. I don't know, July 1st is a Monday. Who cares? Charlotte Flair's, going to be on July 1st. That's her next match, and she's going to be facing off with Rhea Ripley. And Rhea Ripley hasn't wrestled since June 12th, but they're on TV most weeks, so like you're still seeing them, but you're saving their bodies. You're making their appearances more meaningful because look at what Brock is doing. And it doesn't matter if we're sick of seeing Brock. When Brock shows up, he's a draw. You can do that with everyone if you know what you're doing. Like the whole basis of combat sports is built around that. The UFC has fights every week, but they don't roll out Conor McGregor every week. They don't roll out Sean O'Malley every week. They don't roll out Charles Oliveira every week. They have other guys to fill the slot. Now, granted, you don't want to do that predominantly on the same timeline where they only wrestle 3 times a year, like most MMA fighters fighting 3 times a year. But the idea would be to limit how often you see them on television. And then on the flip side, they're doing 3 or 4 house shows a week. That way, you don't see them live, but on TV. But oh my God, Charlotte Flair's coming to Saskatoon. I haven't seen her wrestle on television. I've only seen her wrestle twice on television in 3 months. I gotta go see her live. It's a brilliant business idea that I don't understand why they don't do because they have literally 300 wrestlers. It's not like 1997 where you had 40 guys and 7 of them could draw a house. We aren't in those
Yeah,
times anymore. Like there's an abundance of possibilities here with this deep roster, and if they're not going to utilize it, then what the fuck are we doing?
yeah. It's like 300 wrestlers and only 20 of them are over, if that. Um, but then everybody else is kind of fought, and I already know because of how you think about stuff. There's gonna be enhancement talent throughout that. Um, the reason why it works so good with Brock was because we know business picks up when he's around. He can afford to take losses. He's already seemingly, the apex predator for the longest. And also he kind of treats the company like somebody that he's in a committed relationship with, but he can't stay in the same house.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we need to do something else. Like I can't be around you all the time. So he's that person that comes in and takes breaks, and I would imagine again, like I've always said, like he's gonna eventually get the wins and get stuff and whatnot because they probably pay him too much to book him shitty. So a lot of it is probably a lot of direction is probably stuff he comes up with, and then obviously when he's not in the mood, he's just not in the mood. We don't see him, and then he comes back. And thankfully, as he's gotten older and his career's going on, it seems like he's gotten into a certain groove. Like this cowboy Brock, as we talked about, has probably been his best iteration.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he's having more fun with it, so that works for him. But these other people, like, it's weird. Like Natty's probably in the best shape she's ever been in, and I feel like she's below Dana Brooke at this point.
I think that's fair. Truthfully.
And that's weird. But that's exactly what you're talking about. And it's crazy they've had all these guys for the longest, and they part of the reason why Reigns Reigns Reigns' reign worked is because they actually started booking him like he was a specialty talent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for a while, he was the only reason to tune in to SmackDown. A lot of reasons, in a lot of ways, he kind of still is with the whole Bloodline storyline. But we don't really see him. We don't see him every week, and a lot of that's been aided by the fact that he's parsed out a lot of that star power amidst the Bloodline and allowed stuff with them to permeate so they could still be gone while he's looming. Because it's like, oh, such and such happened, but the tribal chief is watching. They don't do that with nobody else though, because nobody feels special. And it goes along with that mentality that more is more, not less. So that's how it works. But
And that's what we can fix if we actually put in some structure. But let's talk about Moose. He's re-signed with the company. Says it's the longest deal in company history. There's a part of me that really wanted to see him go to MLW or even like Ring of Honor or back to Ring of Honor, I should say. I don't know how many big time offers he had. I don't think he had many. Maybe he had some serious deals, but were they as good as Impacts? Now, granted, Moose has even said like he's not motivated by money or fame. He's motivated by his legacy, and he said that he wants to be spoken about in the company the same way that guys like AJ Styles and Kurt Angle have been. And truthfully, I know a lot of people are gonna thumb their nose at me. It's like, oh, you can't get hired elsewhere. That's why. Honestly, if I was a wrestler and I was making enough money to live and put some away, I wouldn't worry about how big the checks were coming, because I'd be thinking I could wrestle until I'm 50. And if I'm smart with my money, maybe invest a little bit, I wouldn't need to wrestle or take a normal job after that. So like I believe him when he says that he wants to worry about his legacy in wrestling over anything else. I still don't think he got any offers close to what Impact was giving him, and I don't know what Impact gave him is significant. I'd assume six figures, maybe mid six figures at best. But he says it's the longest deal in company history. And honestly, while I don't think he's the kind of talent that you want to build around as the feature, he's not a great promo guy. I do think he's a valuable asset for your week to week television. And I think he's someone that can give you a lot, because I saw him live in Columbus, last weekend or the weekend before, I should say. And he had a banger with Swan. And listen, I know everyone's like Swan's a really great wrestler, and like Swan can, have a paper bag, and carry that to a 4-star. I know that. But I've seen Moose have great matches with Alberto El Patron. And Al Patron's not a great worker. Like, he's fine. He's very overrated. I've seen Moose have great matches with Sami Callihan, with Eddie Edwards. I've seen Moose have great matches because Moose is a great athlete, and he knows what he's doing in the ring. So, like, I'm very confident in him being a primetime, prominent player within the company. And I'd like to see him have a stable that he can use to raise up some talent around him. And I wouldn't mind seeing him in a tag team either at this point in his career, because I think he could bring a lot to the tag team division. But right now with the ABC, Chris Bay and Ace Austin, I feel like you got to let them play out, because this tag team title run isn't for their tag team career, it's for their singles career. Because I think when they're done, Ace Austin and Chris Bay are going to be elevated up the roster a bit, and you need to give them time to establish what they can be going forward. So I'm interested to see what they do with Moose going forward. So Marcus, thoughts on Moose and this big new deal?
100% agree with everything you said. You gotta let them. First off, you gotta let them bulls in the ABC rock. They on fire right now. They. Hottest X Division stars. Also, I think Austin had a more significant run. It's kind of hard to remember when Bay was champion, but I do remember it. Because I wanted him to have a more significant run. But yes, to your point, like obviously they're killing it as a tag team, but this is thoroughly going to elevate them once things come to an end, which all things do. So, but I think right now you got to let them rock, because right now I put them against any tag team across the industry. Right now, they're that good. Um, Moose, I'm happy for him. I'm glad. It was interesting the way that he wrote that, because when I saw it, I was like, okay, he's leaving, and then you keep reading, you're like, holy hell. Um, Yeah, but yeah, to your point, not necessarily, the guy, but he's a hell of a guy, and I think, I think it's appreciation on both sides. He really came in there, and we got to see him build and grow, in the 7 years that he's been there, and grow to being a world champion, a situation and spot that I don't necessarily know if he would have gotten in other places, as we've talked about with various other talent that have come through Impact throughout the years. In a lot of ways, the first and maybe only time they've ever been world champion. Um, or an opportunity for them to become a world champion and to be looked at as that potentiality elsewhere, and then they become a world champion. But also, Impact gave them that situation first. So, um, yeah, like you, I think we've seen him do a lot. There is more to do. Like you said, there is more matchups and other things that he could do, and spots that he could be in. And I'm looking forward to seeing him do that. And I think, like you said, a tag team will be an interesting situation for them to do. I don't know if I would necessarily. I mean, Mac's not there anymore, but that would be potentially a interesting combination to see enemies go to frenemies and have maybe a potential tag team with him and Swan, real David and Goliath action type of deal. Who knows?
I could see
Um,
that. The
yeah.
one thing that I was thinking about, and I don't want to just go into this direction because it's Juneteenth, but I wouldn't mind if Moose hooked up with Kenny King and the young Sheldon Jean as a trio of sorts. I
Mm.
know the idea of like an all black stable seems on the nose today, and I know it's well you're just doing it's private party or what's the one Top Dollars in
Hit row.
Hit Row. You're the New Day, but that's the idea isn't because they're three black dudes. The idea is that they're all directionless right now, and
Hmm.
like Moose could act as a more quiet, almost Kingpin esque character. And I think King and Sheldon Jean are both being placed. Like Sheldon Jean is someone I think Impact has high hopes for, and like he reminds me so much as a very young Booker T with how he moves in the ring, with the way he shifts his weight and the way he throws his kicks. It strikes me as '94 Booker all over again.
Right.
He
High
doesn't
praise.
have the great forearm clothesline because like Booker would do this great like flying forearm, but he would like drop to his knees when he would hit him and he wouldn't like lay out all the way. It was really cool. Loved playing as him in WCW NWO Revenge. And I think Sheldon Jean has that capability of being someone who could hit that level. I'm not saying he's going
Yeah.
to. I'm saying he
Yeah.
could. And I think having
Now,
Moose as like a Kingpin esque character with those two as the starting base would be a wonderful
now that
idea.
now that you mentioned that, I actually do like that potentiality of contrast and personalities better than him and Swan. For no other reason than Kenny King's gonna run his mouth and try to take over and be like, think about it, King Moose, and
The
then
Moose King.
Moose just gives yeah Moose King, and then Moose just gives him that look. And it'll be cool because Impact can do this because it's a part of the product. They can like do some CGI smoke coming out his nose, and then he just walks off. He's getting more pissed and more pissed, and then he gets in the ring, and him and King ended up working well together. And of course, you have, the youngster on the outside providing a little, misdirection and whatnot. And he can be the third wheel, and it works because he's the up and coming guy. He can be learning from essentially two veterans at this point. Um, so that might actually end up working out better. King Moose Moose King. I actually like that. That'll be a good that'll be a great little thing, and then you could potentially set up a little tag tourney. Um, him and Moose, Callahan and Christ, um, so on and so forth. I wouldn't know what We talked about the potentiality of tagging, Gresham with Bailey. Set up a little mini tag tourney, a tournament or a gauntlet, not an all-purpose get everybody in the match type of deal that they usually try to do, like an actual gauntlet or something, and then have them go up against ABC. I think that'll be good.
I think that's a good way to go. The other idea I was playing around with is turning him into like a Kingpin character where he doesn't really say much or work much, but when he does, he annihilates people. You bring him like give him like a nice like walking stick, like something like the Kingpin used to have, with like the jewel top, and come up with a very intimidating but very sophisticated name. But it would be like Savant Industries or King Moose Corporation, something like that. And like really lean into what Moose does well with. And Moose does well with the physicality and
Yeah.
with the presence.
Yeah.
Like he's not a great promo guy. He's not a bad promo guy. Like if you keep Moose to like a WWE 90 seconds like in between matches, he's great. Doing a 10-minute promo, not a strength. So I think if you negate that, you give him a mouthpiece, you give him two henchlings, maybe someone else to help freshen things up eventually. I think you could turn Moose into your version of Roman Reigns, and I think it would get over, especially with the fact that Moose is huge. And if you have him go away for like 2 or 3 months, where he's like, I know what I need to do to take the next step, and maybe pull like a Kylo Ren, but I'm not sure I'm strong enough to do it. And then he goes off for 3 months, comes back, forms his group with Sheldon Jean and Kenny King, and then maybe he brings in someone like Ziggy Dice, to like provide some flavor, if you will. Then you have him just basically become this very quiet, monolithic character who doesn't wrestle until he needs to. Like he'll be booked in tag matches, 4-on-4s, 3-on-3s, and he'll never get in the ring. Like he won't even try to. But when he does, he decimates who is ever across from him to the point where like you don't know if that person's okay anymore. And Moose will just do like let's say he does it with Tommy Dreamer. Tommy Dreamer, Rhino, and whoever doing a 6-man tag. And Moose doesn't enter the ring for 20 minutes. Then he finally does, and he hits one running big boot on Dreamer, and Dreamer doesn't get up. And then Moose will just say the next week, I told you I didn't know if I was strong enough to do what I needed to do to get better, and I did. So stop booking people in matches with me unless you want them to leave on stretchers. And that'll be the last thing he says for months. And then anytime you put him in a match, it's 30 seconds gone, Moose wins.
Or and you could do a thing where he only wrestles with his group. He waits until his henchlings get title matches and he inserts himself into the matches.
Yeah, that could work too.
That could work. And there's also some, like, to your point, there's some immediate comedy that they could do, where, because as soon as you said henchman, I immediately thought of Dice and
Swinger.
Swinger.
Mm-hmm.
But this could be a situation where, like, you would think it would go one way, and it's like, no, we don't want you, we want Dice. What the hell are you talking about, Daddy? He's my henchman. Like that whole deal, and then we see Dice get into a serious zone, and to the point where Moose makes him beat up Swinger.
I could
That
see
could
that.
be a whole thing. That could be a whole thing, and then, like you said, he goes away. We see these guys slowly but surely get more aggressive. Then Moose comes back because he also has the presence now added with the aesthetic that he starts to look suave, but he's also intimidating. He's vicious. He's another person that has his own unique variation of the spear with the flipping of it all. So that could work, man. That's that's one idea I need them to steal from us, because that's what he needs right
Mm-hmm.
now. Like we said, we've seen him do everything. I feel like he was the last Impact Grand Champion. I'm probably wrong on that, but that's what it feel like. Because he's the last one I remember. But yeah, he definitely need that change up.
I mean, truthfully, he's the only one I remember. I mean, I'm not wrong. The belt wasn't ugly, but it wasn't great. The last one was Austin Aries. He defeated Matt Sydal.
Yeah, that's the case. He should be forgotten. Where is Sydal? Was he injured?
He's in AEW.
No, I know
Specifically,
he's in AEW. We haven't seen him.
no, I just saw him in some photos.
Oh, okay, okay. Maybe he's about to wrestle. He's been in Ring of Honor because, like I said, they kind of pace those guys out. Because I was like, last time I saw Matt Sydal, he was almost killing himself on a shooting star.
Let's see. He just wrestled 3 times this month. He wrestled on Ring of Honor Club 16, 15, 16, and 17.
That's well, okay. That's where he's been. Got it, got it.
All
Makes
right.
sense.
Let's talk about our last two topics. Ted DiBiase says the charges against him and his sons are a bunch of garbage as they're looking for a scapegoat. When asked about what's going on with going ringside, he said, "We're doing good," said the elder Ted DiBiase. And all of us, and all of that is a bunch of garbage, according to in alluding to the charges. There we go. I'm not at liberty to talk about it, but it's kind of like they're looking for a scapegoat. We're caught in the middle of it. If I didn't have a celebrity name, they wouldn't even be looking at us. To refresh everyone, he's the U.S. Department of Justice issued a statement saying that his son, Ted DiBiase Jr., a.k.a. Theodore Marvin DiBiase Jr., has been charged with one count of conspiracy to commit fraud and to commit theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, 6 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, and 4 counts of money laundering. The charges are related to misappropriating funds of millions of dollars in federal safety net funds intended for needy families and low-income individuals in Mississippi. This is the same thing that Brett Favre has been wrapped up in. Apparently, Brett Favre may not be as involved as people may have been alleged because what's his face? The kicker on WB television, Pat McAfee. I think he got sued and settled out of court with Brett Favre. So like, that's
Oh no.
yeah. That's so I don't know what's going on there. Um, I don't know what's going to happen with Ted and his son. I think he's involved in the charges as well, but I can't be sure. But basically, it's a very interesting situation to follow. We'll see what ends up happening. But his other son, Brett DiBiase, has already pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the U.S. And Mike
Mm.
DiBiase, his eldest son, I think was charged with attempted murder. Let's see.
Jesus Christ, they really are heels.
All right. Mike DiBiase was arrested following a 12-hour standoff with police in Amarillo, Texas. Initially stopped by police for a parole violation, and a SWAT team had to use tear gas to arrest DiBiase for both parole violations and hindering apprehension. I don't know what the violations are for his parole or why he had one.
How you fight against a standoff with cops? Like at that point.
And the funny thing is, like, they're coming through the walls. Like, what? Just go out and surrender. Be like, all right, now we're good. Don't fuck my house up.
Because a standoff means you shot back. So,
Well,
and
it
at
doesn't
that
necessarily
point,
mean it doesn't necessarily mean that bullets were exchanged. It means that he wasn't coming out of the house and was
comply.
ordered
Yeah,
to, and
yeah.
things stalemated. Sometimes there is gunfire involved, but at that point, there's not a 12-hour standoff. There's a 12-second delay in the charges against the wall as they explode inwards and knock your ass out.
Yeah, that almost comes off more like a hostage scenario or something like that. Or they were told something could be more potentially dangerous, which is why they. I would imagine they didn't have no. They don't really have issues going in and getting people unless there was something that could have been in danger or something. So, but that's crazy.
It is crazy. The last thing is, and we're not going to provide images for this. Apparently, Rhea Ripley got herself in a little bit of hot water earlier today when a fan sent her something, either via DM or tweeted at her or messaged or like posted a message on Instagram. And it's a photo of Rhea that was covered in nut juice, if you will. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it was a tribute photo from a very grateful gentleman fan. and she posted it to her Instagram. I think it was to her Instagram reel, maybe, or her memory. I don't know how Instagram works. I only ever post a photo and then I'm just done. But she posted it. It got screen captured. Now it's been sent around. And one, I don't know why anyone thought that was an appropriate thing to send, let alone make. This country's full of degenerates, and we need to fix that soon. Two, I don't know why Rhea Ripley would ever post anything to her account from a fan, knowing that it could be something like this. Her character is entirely far too sexual to be this unaware. I know everyone's like, well, she's not really a sexual character. She's a dominant female badass. She's the mommy of a man who's younger than her, granted by like 6 months. She thrives off of and like really steers into the idea of being like stepping on people because some people are just fucking weirdos. Like she steers into that, right? She steers into that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's well aware that as a woman who's broaching 6 foot, she has a very different set of fans than, say, someone like Trish Stratus would have. So, like, either she did this knowingly for the lulz, she was maybe impaired due to some funky lettuce or hard cider and thought it was a good idea, or she really is that naive despite being around this industry for as long as she has. But either way, it makes her look really bad that she did this. And it also makes that fan extra creepy. Because now everyone has seen his insides on the outside, and I wish I never had to see it. I'm not going to show the photo. Find Humble Wrestling on Twitter. Look through the comment sections. It's there. You will find it. You will regret it, but you will find it.
We try not to shame here.
Oh, no.
So I'm gonna leave
You try not to shame. I'm fine with it. I think this country needs more shame.
He may have been inspired by a former NXT Women's Champion and got inspired.
Are we talking about Paige?
I knew he'd get it in 3. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. God. How did Xavier Woods, of all people, end up in that?
I don't know. To this day, I'm like, how did that? I'm like, you really are like just a different type of guy. Because I'm like, how did that even? Like, and all I feel like this was before his connection with the New Day.
Or at the beginning? No,
Yeah.
it was early, but it was because like they referenced it. I think like the Usos referenced it.
Oh yeah, they definitely referenced it. They was like, we don't want to get X-rated like your boy Xavier Woods. But yeah, that is a very unique trio to say the least. But yeah, this fan is and it's weird too because she's aware of this. She plays into it a little bit, but at the same time, she's creeped out a little bit by it because at this point, like you said, she's playing into like a triple fantasy, like the Amazon of it all, the Gothic of it all, and then the dominatrix of it all. So it's like, the whole sub situation, death by snoo snoo for all you Futurama fans. And then, you just got the, my Dark Empress whole deal and all that. So, like you said, I'm hoping it was an honest mistake. Hopefully it was an honest mistake, because it certainly wasn't a mistake on one end. So, but yeah, this probably just I'm not gonna use the word I was gonna use. This is just a small example of because you think you know what I was about to say. I'm like, no, we're not using that with this. Um, Small example of what lies with the underbelly of some of these fans. So
Well, with that being said, I can see no other option here but to end the show. Be sure to follow us on our Instagrams, or not our Instagrams, our Twitters, and our social medias. You can find the website at realnerdcorp.com, realnerdcorp.com. And on the Twitter at NERDCORP. You can find Marcus on Twitter at Paradox Kid, PARADOXKID.
that's me.
That's Paradox Kid. You can also find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, TruePennyShow on Twitter. That's True Penny Show on Twitter. They're talking GLEAT and probably the upcoming New Japan G1 climax situation. Tournament, I guess. I guess it's a tournament. It's more of a round-robin affair, but I guess.
Yeah.
They'll be talking about that. Be sure to check them out. They post their links to the shows on Twitter, so that's how you can find them there. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHDNERDCORP, and on the Instagram at ChadSphoto, at CHDSPHOTOHUT. Be sure to check us out next Monday for another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast right here at twitch.tv/Wrestling Underground or on the YouTube at The Wrestling Underground. Links to both should be on the website or posted on Twitter. I don't know. So for Marcus Green, I'm Chad Porto. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night.